hope always springs eternal when a quarterback gets pulled out of the transfer portal. And boy, there were a lot pulled out of the transfer portal this past offseason. There is a chance that on the opening week of the 2023 season, 23 different Power 5 schools will have a starting quarterback who played for another school the previous season. We'll see if that number gets that high. There are some competitions that still need to be played out in preseason camp, but that is the potential max number, and it's a big number. How do you sort through all of that? It's a lot of names, people you've heard of, maybe some you haven't heard of because they weren't necessarily playing at their old school, but you've definitely heard of Shedeur Sanders, who is at Jackson State. He's going to Colorado. You've heard of Tyler Buckner, who's going from Notre Dame to Alabama. Graham Mertz, Wisconsin to Florida. There's a lot of guys moving around. Kyron Drones, if you're not a Baylor fan and you didn't watch him as the backup to Blake Shapen, you may not know much about him, but he's the next hope at Virginia Tech. So who among these guys will make the biggest impact in 2023? I'm going to give you 5 transfer quarterbacks that I think could make a huge impact on their teams. I'm going to give you 1 guy in the SEC, 3 in the Big Ten, and 1 at the independent that we just lump in with the rest of the Power 5 because it acts and plays like one. Obviously, we can start there. That's Sam Hartman. He's going from Wake Forest to Notre Dame. What does Sam Hartman need to do for Notre Dame? He needs to make them the type of team that does not lose to Marshall and Stanford. The Fighting Irish season, the first season under Marcus Freeman, would have been completely different without those 2 losses. We would look back on that in a totally different way. And by the end of the season, it felt like they were playing pretty well and they figured things out. But obviously, it was a struggle because Buckner was the day 1 starter. He got hurt. Drew Pine came in, and it was during that transition that they lost to Marshall. If Sam Hartman is as consistent as he was at Wake Forest, that sort of thing shouldn't happen in Notre Dame. Yeah, they may lose to Ohio State, but they're going to be very competitive against everybody else that's good, and they should be able to beat the other teams that they will be heavily favored against. Sam Hartman, remarkably consistent there. Don't know if he's going to have quite as good a receiving core at Notre Dame, but it could be. He will have the best offensive line he's ever played behind. He will have backs who can help him out. So that's one who will make an immediate, instant impact. Let's go to the SEC. You think I'm going to say Tyler Buckner. I'm not, for a couple of reasons. One, I don't know if he's going to win the job at Alabama yet. That still seems very much up in the air. Jalen Milroe, Ty Simpson, it seems like are still in the mix for that job. The other thing is, if Tyler Buckner wins and Alabama wins, say, 11 games, is it because of what Tyler Buckner did, or is it going to be because they were just better throughout the rest of the roster than everybody else? So it's interesting. I saw a YouTube clip of Ryan Kelly, the current Indianapolis Colts center who played at Alabama, talking at SEC Media Days in 2015, and Alabama had 5 quarterbacks still in a competition going into preseason camp that year. They won the national title with Jake Coker. So that level of talent makes it hard to judge. But there is another guy in the SEC who, if his team improves dramatically, I think he will get a lot of the credit for it, and that is Devin Leary. I was in my closet the other day, found the hat that NC State sent out prior to the 2022 season, the Heisman campaign for Devin Leary. He was coming off an incredible 2021 year, but he got hurt. It didn't go well last year. He's now at Kentucky. The guy who's back at Kentucky is just as important, Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator. Remember, he came to Kentucky in 2021 from the LA Rams. That's the same year Will Levis transferred to Kentucky. They worked very well together. Cohen did so well, he got a job with the Rams again. And then the offense at Kentucky did not quite work as well last year, plus Levis playing through nagging injury. It could be a lot better. Kentucky has a lot of room for improvement. Devin Leary, who definitely has NFL tools, definitely has an NFL arm, has a chance to show exactly what he can do against very good competition. This is a team that could improve dramatically. And if it does, Devin Leary will probably be the reason it does. So I think he's the one in the SEC to watch. I'm going to give you 3 guys in the Big Ten, though. There's a lot of transfer quarterbacks in the Big Ten, some coming from other Big Ten schools, some coming from other places. We'll start in Lincoln, Nebraska with the newest John Deere pitchman, Jeff Sims. I'm sure growing in Jacksonville, Florida, and signing with Georgia Tech, Jeff Sims never thought he'd be advertising tractors, but he is advertising tractors in Nebraska, and he is the great hope for the Cornhuskers. Matt Rule picked Jeff Sims after a very interesting quarterback competition in which he had all his quarterbacks live in spring practice. The defense could hit them. They had 5, and they had a lot to choose from, and Matt Rule wanted to see what they had. And Jeff Sims rose above them all. He's 6'4", 220. He also has NFL tools. The question is he going to be able to show them? I'm not sure he ever really got to show them at Georgia Tech, but you could see flashes there. I remember seeing his debut. I was in Tallahassee, 2020. Obviously, weird circumstances. The first game of the pandemic season. Jeff Sims' college debut. He goes to Tallahassee and beats Florida State. And you thought, okay, this guy, if he develops, could be a star. It never worked out for him at Georgia Tech. But with Matt Rule at Nebraska, maybe that's a possibility. Let me throw another name at you out of the transfer portal in Nebraska, and that's Billy Kemp. Comes from another ACC school. He was at Virginia. He had 67 catches in 2021. 2022, there were injuries. Obviously, Virginia's season was cut short by tragedy. If there's some weapons around Jeff Sims, I think there's a chance that he could play very well, which could make Nebraska a bowl team. Maybe I'm not going to go too far in predicting success in Nebraska. They need to take some baby steps, but if he can get them even back to bowl eligibility, he's going to be a very popular guy in that state. He's going to help sell a lot of tractors, and it'll be a big deal for them and for him as they go into 2024. Another guy in that league, though, Cade McNamara. He's already led a team as a starter to a Big Ten championship. He was the starter at Michigan in 2021 when they won the Big Ten. He got beat out by J.J. McCarthy in 2022, and now he's at Iowa trying to make that offense, well, I mean, trying to save their offensive coordinator's job. That's really no other way to say it. Brian Ferentz has this new contract that says they have to average 25 points a game. They need to win 7 games. That's going to be a lot on Cade McNamara's shoulders. Now, he's going to need some help. The offensive line is going to need to block better. The running game is going to need to give them more than they gave Spencer Petras and company last year. But there's going to be a lot of scrutiny on that offense because the defense is going to be really good again. I don't know if it's going to be as dominant as it was last year, but if Iowa's offense had been even barely adequate last year with that defense, they easily win the Big Ten West. They're playing for the conference title. It would have been a very different season instead of just a frustrating slog that ended with Kirk Ferentz defending his decision to not fire his son and a new reworked contract for Brian Ferentz that we're all just going to be counting on the tote board to see if they can score 325 points. Cade McNamara can help make that all go away. You know, if they're coming out and they're scoring with relative ease, or even if they're just okay on offense, Iowa's going to be a really good team because that defense, we know what they're going to be. We've seen it. The special teams led by LeVar Woods, they're always on point. If the offense can be average, that's a good team. If Cade McNamara can make the offense average, it doesn't feel like we're asking that much. And it's a guy, again, helped Michigan make the playoff. So there's a really good chance that Cade McNamara could be a big-time hero in Iowa City. One more guy in the Big Ten, and he's going to be doing things that you're not used to seeing from somebody in that uniform. It is Tanner Mordecai at Wisconsin. So he spent his first 3 seasons at Oklahoma, the last 2 at SMU, where he threw for 72 touchdowns over 4 seasons playing for Sonny Dykes and Rhett Lashley. You know, he played both those years, played Luke Fickell's Cincinnati team. So Luke Fickell, who is now the coach at Wisconsin, had a chance to scout Tanner Mordecai, had a chance to see what he can do. And Phil Longo, who Luke Fickell hired as Wisconsin's offensive coordinator from North Carolina, recruited Tanner Mordecai out of high school when Longo was at Ole Miss. So a lot of familiarity here. And the only thing that's going to look unfamiliar is Wisconsin players running this offense with air raid principles. Now, I know what you're thinking. They're just going to throw the ball. They're going to forget running. They're not going to forget running the ball. Phil Longo has shown over the years that when he has a good offensive line and good backs, that he's willing to run the ball. But I'll take you back to North Carolina. When they had their best season running the ball, Sam Howell also had his best season as a quarterback. The last year Sam Howell was at North Carolina in 2021, it felt like he was trying to carry the rushing game and the passing game, and they both suffered because of it. But when he had some help from that line, from those backs, he was throwing darts. And that could be Tanner Mordecai with Wisconsin's offensive line and backs around him. This is a team that had to fire Paul Chryst last year. The administration at Wisconsin has made it clear, and Luke Fickell taking that job makes it clear to us, that Wisconsin's not thinking about the Big Ten West anymore. They shouldn't, because it's not going to exist after this year. Wisconsin's thinking about winning the Big Ten. Wisconsin's thinking about competing for national titles. Tanner Mordecai, sixth-year senior, could give them a jump start on that and then help himself get into the NFL draft and maybe go higher than he would have had he come out after this past year at SMU. That one is going to be so interesting to watch because it's not going to look like what we've seen, but it could be very, very productive. So those are 5 of a lot of transfer quarterbacks who could make a very big impact in 2023.